I just couldn't resist getting one more spin out of that lovely, I don't know what you call it. I was calling it a Glockenspiegel. I don't know what the hell it is. I mean, I was just messing around with some made up German word. So I don't know what it is, but it's in Fredericksburg and they have it every year during the Christmas holidays. And I just thought, we're not really officially out of this until tomorrow. So I decided to run it back one more time. Speaking of back, I'm back, you're back, we're back. We did do a show on Friday with Mr. Russ Winter. Hope you saw that. Hope you caught that. Look at what we have here. We've got Jasper, the astrological cat. He's with us. And Peachy is hunting something right now. You going to get it? What are you getting? I think we have errant roaches here in Texas. They're big. They're big suckers. Every now and then, and I think that's what she's found. She just got it. That's called fulfilling your destiny, your biological destiny. That's what she did. The genes kicked in, and she hunted in the jungle, the spider plant on the floor, and just snatched it up. Pretty impressive. Where were you? Where was this guy? He's like, I'm not into that. Jasper was never much of a hunter. But as a philosopher king, he reigns supreme. Yes, you do. There are many good cats on the internet, by the way. Apparently, Matt from Quantum of Conscience has a very popular cat. Comes in on the podcast. Did you get it? Did you get your thing? Good kitty. One time when we were living in Stonewall, we would have mice. And she was a hell of a mouser. She was a major league mouser, let me tell you. How is everybody? She still is. She just doesn't have the mice. So she has to settle for the occasional Texas field roach, whatever the fuck they're called. How is everybody? How you doing out there in there? Oh, that reminds me. We got some business to take care of. Some business. Everybody have a good New Year's Eve, New Year, whatever you did. However you experienced that. Let me see here. There we go. Okay. Let me get back over here. How are you with your resolutions? You got any resolutions? I don't normally do resolutions because I'm not very good at keeping them. So I just decide not to do them. I think mindset is good. Mindset is good to have. I think maybe cultivating a type of mindset. But for some people who are goal-oriented, resolutions can be a good thing. I mean, I think we're kind of operating off of a false time and false calendar anyway. So perhaps springtime would be a good time, April. And in some calendars, April is the start of the year. So, if you don't want to do your resolution now, you can always wait till April. Oh, she's back. She's back at the spider plant. So yeah, what a strange way to start the new year, isn't it? You wake up and all of a sudden we own Venezuela. You know, as I was preparing for tonight's show, I say we, I'm talking about, of course, the people of the United States. I would not be referring to uh, we as in me and you, but the collective we. We now own it. And I guess if we own it, then it belongs to the Western world. And I guess we can share the largesse, as it were. It's so weird, right? Like on Friday, this happens to me. On Friday, I had Russ on the show, and I get these premonitions. And like many of you, and they come to me, and sometimes they come to me days before things are about to happen. And it was very similar with the flood here. Where just days before the flood, I started to have all these very intense feelings about getting to higher ground and actually moving. Let me get rid of this. Always got to burn that first one. So when I was doing the show with Russ on Friday, the day or two before the show on Friday, maybe around Wednesday, I started thinking about how much Saddam Hussein and Nicolas Maduro looked alike. And I find it rather interesting that now they've met similar ends. And it was all just brewing, right? And one of the things that I was going to do with the predictions, this one is really pretty striking. One of the things that I was going to do with the predictions is I was going to look at Venezuela and just when this whole Venezuela thing was going to go down. Yeah, the whole thing is really weird. Strange parallels. Really, really strange parallels. So I was going to do this show last week, and last Sunday night, I just wasn't literally or figuratively prepared. I needed to put a few more things together, get my A game on internally. And so I put it off. Had I gone through it or gone through with it, and I had prepared to the degree that I was planning on, we would have talked about Saddam Hussein, and we would have talked about Maduro, and we would have talked about the plight of Venezuela. Let me see if I can find Venezuela's chart. Because it was something I was going to cover. Venezuela does have a chart. There's a chart of Caracas, and then there's a chart of Venezuela. The thing that really piqued my interest about Venezuela was that it is in conjunction with the U.S. sun. So this is Venezuela's chart. Scorpio rising, Mars in Scorpio, Uranus in Scorpio. And then there's that sun in the 8th house. So the U.S. sun is over there as well. So there's a conjunction between these two countries. And what was I looking at that was grabbing my attention here? Let's see. What was it? Moon at 5 Capricorn. And then we have the Sagittarian planets here. And then we have the Gemini planets over here. So I think what I was staring at, I can't even remember. Maybe this is why I didn't do the show. Not because there isn't a there. But I swear I thought there was something. It might have been this Capricorn moon. I think it was the Capricorn moon. And I think at that time, if we go back to last Sunday night, there was a Mars conjunction with the moon of Venezuela. And I thought that that was a really interesting and martial influence on Venezuela. That was the thing that stuck out to me. It's like, oh, this is happening. But it's one of those things where like you could see the aggression that was mounting. Like you could just track Mars. We could go back to Mars and Sagittarius, where a lot of the quote unquote aggression was taking place, right? Especially on the ocean with Neptune in the first house of Venezuela. And so what we've seen here is we've seen Mars gather some momentum and ultimately start to cook, right? And now it's all about, well, it's about a lot of things. And we're going to get into some of that tonight. But the second house and the eighth house are all about resources. So the second house is about physical resources. And then the eighth house is about non-physical resources. The eighth house is often associated with loans, debts, other people's money, right? And then the second house is kind of what's yours, which you can physically hold. So we have this aggregation of Capricorn planets that are all down in Venezuela's second house. And that's what I was looking at, particularly Mars. And I thought, this might be too soon, right? Like, because sometimes these things have a way of dragging out. And that's not the case at all. Like Mars was definitely in the mix. So now we have a resource grab in Venezuela. It's more than just a resource grab, though, because we're not just talking about Venezuela. We're talking about the entirety of South America. And as a byproduct of that, Mexico, Central America, and Canada. One of the things that's been going on is that there's been a lot of talk coming out of Calgary about seceding from Canada and being a part of the United States, which, by the way, I've talked about on a previous show. And they're all ready for it, right? They are all ready for it, the people in Calgary. But I think that there's probably a bigger play going on right now. Okay, before I drop into the rest of the show and get caught up in the whirlwind, there's a couple of things I want to take care of. First of all, I just want to say thank you all for being here. Appreciate you. Appreciate you showing up here on a Sunday night. I know that there's other things you could be doing with your time. So I want to thank you for sharing your time with me. That's number one. Number two, I have a special going on right now. And it was up until Christmas Day. I'm going to let it go until the end of this week because we haven't had that many shows and I haven't really been able to talk about it all that much. But it's a great way to get your year started. I have a special on a transit reading with me, yours truly. And that is, I'm going way back in time here. A transit reading is $155, normally $250. So you're getting a $95 discount on the, is that right? Yeah, that's right. $95 discount on the reading. And all you got to do is go to my website and look up transit, like the transit reading. And it's right there. You don't have to do anything. There's no code. It's already set up for $155. A fair amount of you have already taken advantage of it. So I implore the rest of you who would like to get a reading, especially for 2026, to do so. Friday will be the last day. I'll remind everybody. So by the time we get to Sunday Night AstroLive next week, it'll be too late. So you can go there and you can get other readings there too. You're not limited to that. But that's the one that I have a special on now. And we'll have all the way through until next Friday. Keeping it in the fiduciary ballpark, we have an opportunity to help a friend of the show who is actually in chat tonight. This is Lynette Jardine, the Queen of Speed, whom I have known for quite a long time. And she's going through a rough patch, and she's trying to get back on her feet and stay off the streets and get her car in running order. So there's a little GoFundMe right now. And let me put this link in the chat. And if you have an extra few cents that you've lost between the cushions in your couch, obviously that's metaphoric. You may want to spread a little bit of your let me see if I can get this in here. Here it goes. It's a long link. There we go. There it is right there. Okay, good. And it's in here as well. There we go. Yeah, spend some of your goodwill and abundance and help out one of our fellow Chatarians. Lynette's really good people, and we're just doing what we can to keep her in the game. So there's an opportunity for you to get your year off in a generous way. You can help a fellow human. And we do this from time to time. We've done it in the past. And it looks like Lynette has gotten pretty close to her goals, but, every little bit helps. So there we go. Okay, so we got me out of the way. We got Lynette out of the way. Chat, you're not out of the way, but I did want to recognize you. Say thank you for being here. So let's begin. Let's officially kick this show off the road. So how many of you were surprised by what happened? I'm going to look at your comments in chat. I want to see how many of you, show of hands, were you surprised that this thing happened with Maduro in Venezuela? I wasn't. I was a little surprised by the timing, although going back and looking at that chart and just having that weird sense that there was something very Saddam Hussein-like going on. That there was something in the wind. There's something in the wind. None of you are surprised. Nope, not at all. Not surprised. Hi, Elspeth. Yeah. Were you okay? Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. What do you guys think of the timing? Did you think it was going to happen that quickly? Or did you think that they were going to play this out and try to make more of a case for what they're doing? I'll tell you what I'm surprised with, that there wasn't more of a fight. That's what I was surprised with. I mean, Jesus, if it's that interesting, removing somebody, why is it taking, why haven't they done anything with Anthony Fauci? I mean, talk about somebody who's made people's lives very difficult and much more closer to home, by the way. It was that easy. How come Tony Fauci's still running the streets? Astrology said something would happen. Well, the Mars conjunction with Venezuela's moon in their chart is definitely martial. Maduro, I think, did I look at his chart? I think I did. What did I see in Maduro's chart? Maduro is a Sagittarius. Yeah. There was something about Maduro's chart as well. Let's pull it up here. What was it? So this is his chart. Let's bring up Maduro's chart. So what did I see here? Well, the first thing is Pluto, and Pluto right on his south node, because he has the true node in Leo at 1 degree. So he has his south node over here, and Pluto's transiting his south node at 1 degree. So he was a goner. He was a goner. It was just a matter of when, right? Just a matter of when. If we go down here, what else was there? There was something else. It happened on the full moon. So the full moon was in his 12th house, which is hidden, isn't it? That's interesting. I tell you, if he could have held out until Saturn Neptune went into Aries, he might have fared a little bit better. Maybe the White House astrologer told them, hey, you got to get this guy before Saturn and Neptune trying his Mercury and his sun. They're probably best to go ahead and go do that. Get it over with. He has Mars in the first house, like the Donald does in Leo. Not on his ascendant, though, but deeper in his first house. So, yeah, Pluto on his south node. That was it, right? There was nobody there, none of his partners, whether they're China or Russia or whomever, were there to help him. In fact, I think he was going to meet with some Chinese officials, and they just said, fuck this. We're going to go in and Noriega you. I mean, wasn't that what that was like? It was like a Noriega to Panama mission. And they just took his ass out. And the plan ultimately, if you kind of follow the narrative, the plan is to, Saturn is 8th house, 9th house. Not quite. but getting there though. Huh. Yeah. The plan, if you follow the plan, this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, this Calgary thing. They want all of Canada. So Steve Bannon, who's become much more critical of Israel in the past couple of weeks, has been, ever since Donald Trump was elected and inaugurated, which is almost a year now, in terms of the inauguration part, Bannon's been talking about this golden dome. Everything's been gold. He's been talking about this golden dome. And the golden dome stretches from Greenland to Tierra del Fuego. And Bannon talked about the political alliances in South America. Now, what does that mean to have the Golden Dome? It means that there would be essentially missile defense systems like Israel's Iron Dome, Israel's defense system that would be able to ward off any attack coming from essentially the eastern seaboard into the Western hemisphere. I mean, it's pretty nuts. So this is what Bannon has been promoting. And this idea of taking over Colombia for a number of reasons. You guys are all smart. You know what's there. They've got a shit ton of sweet crude oil. They've got a shit ton of lithium. They've got one of the largest silver stockpiles in the world. Right? This was a total smash and grab. This is what we're looking at now. And so Colombia is part of the conversation as well. Trump just said that the leader of Colombia should watch his ass. Right? Watch his ass. So now we have Colombia, Venezuela. They've got his buddy down there in Argentina, Malay. Cuba is on the list. I guarantee you Cuba's on the list. They're going to flip Cuba. They've already got Bukele in El Salvador. I believe that they're going to go after the Panama Canal. It's a funny thing to say, isn't it? Because it used to belong to us. There's this whole Monroe Doctrine, which gives the president a right to protect the realm. And the realm extending as far south as Tierra del Fuego. And somewhere in the mix is also Mexico and Canada and Greenland. This would be a unification of the entire South and North American landmass under one house, one rule, one law. Now, whether or not it is formal in the sense that we have a completely new name and a new declaration, and we're essentially running this part of the realm and then some, right? Or there are satellite agreements that are put into place with regime change governments. And so what you have is you have a bunch of proxies. So excuse me, Panama and the Panama Canal, it's in the mix. I can tell you that right now. One of the things, and it's not on my PDF, which we're going to go over tonight. It's not on my PDF list, but I'm going to throw it right in there for 2026. That's the United States recapturing the Panama Canal. It's a given. It's an absolute given. They're going to essentially say that Colombia is a problem, just like they were saying that Venezuela is a problem. And with Colombia, of course, you get cocaine and cocaine trafficking. They tried to do the fentanyl thing with Venezuela. It never really fit. The fentanyl comes from Mexico and China. I think most people can agree upon that because the DEA has made fentanyl arrests. And they said, well, it came from Venezuela. Why would it have to come from Venezuela? Why would the Mexican cartels have to depend on, they want less middlemen. That's their goal. They don't, if they have to cooperate with China to get the recipe and the cooking from China to do it, they can do it. Right? But they don't necessarily need to be mules for the Venezuelans. That's not how the Mexican cartels operate, right? They're really into both vertical and horizontal marketing and commercial capture. That's, and they barely coexist on the horizontal with one another, but they do. And the vertical is the market itself and the players that are, they don't need more players in the horizontal space. Right. So I just feel like this whole idea that Venezuela is the biggest fentanyl pusher in the world, it's basically what they've told people so they can feel better about it. Oh, yeah, great. Now, apparently Venezuelans are happy as shit. Like, they're dancing in the streets. They're going to start erecting a statue for Trump there, of Trump, for Trump, to Trump. Got to see how it plays out. There are always unintended consequences for things. And what looks like winning in the moment may have some very unintended consequences. What they are, we're going to find out. We're going to find out. I will say it was pretty impressive that it happened. It happened so quickly. If I'd just gotten this show together on Sunday night and followed through with that Mars Moon conjunction and Pluto on Maduro's south node, boom, whoop, there it is. Like those are meaty, absolutely meaty transits. And the fact that I was talking to Russ before the show about Maduro and he got Saddam Hussein. It's like, okay, well, at least Saddam was an ally at one point. Maduro was never an ally. Could he have been an ally? I don't know. Maybe. And now they have this woman, what's her name? Cortina Machado? Is that, or Corinna Machado? Is that who it is? Is that who the new person is? Let's see if we can find her. I doubt if we can find her. I believe her name is Machado. Who's Alicia Machado? I don't think it's her. No. Let's see. Let's do this. Okay. I know Trump is getting heavy with her. Delcy Rodriguez, my bad. Delcy Rodriguez. So she happens to be a socialist. I don't know. It doesn't seem to me that she's got much screen time here. Longtime socialist who turned to market reforms after the economy collapsed. After the U.S. military arrested Nicolas Maduro and sent him to New York to face criminal charges, Delcy Rodriguez became Venezuela's de facto leader and was identified by President Donald Trump as a key enabler of his policy. I'm thinking they're talking about Maduro's policy. Who is this Cortina Machado? Am I making this up? Corina Machado. Yeah, this is the person. So there's two people involved here. You have this person, Maria Corina Machado, and then you have, this is who they want in. This is who they want in. I believe she was at the Wailing Wall, wasn't she? I think she was. I could be completely wrong, but I think she was. So she is the it girl, right? That's who they want to have in power. Corina Machado. Sign is Delcy Rodriguez. What is her sign? She's a Taurus. So she's stubborn. So both Venus ruled Taurus, Libra vying for position in Venezuela's new government. They probably both work for the same side. That's usually what happens. They're going to get a woman no matter what. Whether it's her or whether it's Corina Machado. Both ruled by Venus. Interesting. Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we drop into my presentation here and get into some 2026. Let me bring this in here. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Okay. I think this is it. Yeah, here we go. All right. So this is the forecast for 2026. So we got the year of the fire horse. And it is an 8-year. Am I right about that? 6, 8, 1. So 1 year. 1 year. I knew that. We're coming out of a 9-year. This is why I think 2025 has been really difficult. Just heavy, having to let go, surrender. 2025 has been brutal for a lot of people. And I know we say that every year, right? Oh, man, 2024. Man, what a fucked up year. There's some truth to that. And every now and then you look back on it and you go, well, yeah, it was 2024 was kind of rough, but 2025, at least for me. And as soon as August hit, man, that was the wake up call. August. But there's, it's just the nature of the 9. I mean, there can be really powerful spiritual opportunities when you're dealing with 9 energy. Let go and let God. I mean, that's kind of what it's about. You got to give up the reins. And it's funny that here we are moving into a horse year, and that's kind of what you want to do with a horse. You want to put the reins on a horse. Unless, of course, you're out in the wild somewhere and you see a group of horses. What do you call a group of horses? Herd. A herd of horses. You see a herd of horses galloping along. Wild, free. Don't see many of those anymore. Used to be a bit more frequent. You don't really want to rein those in. They're cool to look at. But the horse is a work animal. It's a very, very powerful work animal. And it pulls chariots. And here in this slide or this collage, the car is the modern horse. It is the modern chariot. So by and large, horse years go by quickly. This being a 1 year, the focus is very different than it was in 2029. What's interesting about 2029 is that it coincided with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Sorry, 2025. It coincided with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Pisces, which is the last sign, right? And then you get to the number 9 in our cycle. It's the last number before you get to 10, where you go back to essentially 1, right? So in the world of numerology, it's 1 through 9. And then you get to the master numbers 11, 22, 33, 44, et cetera, right? We know those. So it's interesting that we had Saturn and Neptune at the end of the zodiac, which in many ways, Pisces is kind of like the 9th sign. Even though there are 12 signs, it is the final sign of the zodiac. If you remove the representatives of Mercury and Venus, or Libra and Virgo, Gemini, Taurus, you would go from 12 to basically 10 houses or 10 signs. And if you were to take away the moon and just keep it planetary, you would get to 9. But Pisces is like the final sign, or it's like the final number before we go back to 1, which is Aries, right? The first sign of the zodiac. Even though the month of Aries is 4, it is the number 1. So we also have Saturn and Neptune in Aries, in the sign of the fire horse, in a 1 year. So the individual is going to play a very significant role in 2026. And that role can be interpreted in a couple different ways, which we're going to get into as we go through this. But one of the things that I've looked at with the fire horse in previous fire horse years are earth changes. So the year of the fire is 2026, right? Begins on February 17th, 2026, and lasts until February 5th, 2027. A rare cycle intensifying the horse's natural traits of freedoms, passion, and ambition, making a time of dynamic energy, innovation, and bold change. In addition to those qualities and traits, fire horse is known for earthquakes and geologic changes as well, including the Great Quake of 1906 in San Francisco. So the Great Quake, the Great Fire of San Francisco, 1906, fire horse. And it's huge, right? Like that is a massive. So when we get into that story of San Francisco, we're starting to talk about the reset. And we have all these earthquakes and just a absolute planetary map of fires that last around 35, 40 years. And many of you know that it's my belief that we live in an inherited civilization and, for the most part, an inherited time. And some of the work I'm going to be doing this year is on the inherited time part. So when you go back and look at the earthquakes of 1906, they are not insignificant. The April 18th quake, Aries, 1906, the death toll was 3,000 people. But they had another quake that year that was even bigger. 4,000 people in Valparaiso, Chile. Of course, it's going to be on the Ring of Fire, fire horse. Like, where do you train a horse? You train them in the ring. In Taiwan, they had a 6.8, and that was on March 16th, going around the Ring of Fire. 1,258, very exact number. It's amazing that they came up with that exact of a number in 1906. Then we go back around the Ring of Fire again, this time in Ecuador, and that was an 8.8. Right? Now, there is a depth of 20 kilometers. What made the San Francisco earthquake so deadly is how shallow it was. Now, I would suppose that in Chihuahua, Taiwan, they didn't have as many people, which is why you have such a powerful quake at such a low depth and only come up with 1,258 people. And then we have 3 quakes in China that happen fairly quickly. December 22nd, I guess January 7th is part of that fire horse cycle as well. And then March 28th in Fujian. And then we have in German New Guinea another quake on September 14th. And then there's another quake in the same place in Taiwan, and that was a little less than a month later. I don't know how they figure out the magnitude from it. I mean, they didn't have Richter scales back then, but they must have somehow captured it via the magnitude of damage. So, oh yeah, this. I don't know. I don't know how they got there with these numbers, but these are the numbers, and they're big numbers. So 1966 was the last fire horse year. So it's every 50 years. And guess what? We've got big earthquakes happening then as well. March 22nd in China. This one even has adjectives. 8,064 in the death toll. The magnitude was 6.8. So this is from the largest amount of casualties to the least. Turkey. Now here we could, I think, probably agree based on modern geological science that the magnitude here is correct. So 2,394 people. In the Dutch Republic of Congo, there was a 6.6, 140 people died there. Peru, off the coast of central Peru. So the one in China was extreme. The one in Turkey was violent. The one in the Congo was severe. The one in Peru was violent. Same province in China. This was, I guess, a lead up to that earthquake, 7th to the 22nd. Severe, violent. The next one in Nepal was severe. In India, very strong. So it looks like the US managed to skirt these quakes, but nonetheless, right? Like these are really interesting, not just symbols, actual events during the year of the fire horse. Now, if I went through every single year and looked at the quakes, which I did not do, by the way, I'll bet you would see something similar, but perhaps not as extreme. So when we look at just the energy of Saturn, Neptune, Aries, it's all very kind of volcanic, unstable, liquid, fluid, like things are happening beneath the surface. So we're not just talking earthquakes, we're also looking at volcanoes, specifically undersea volcanoes, cracks and fissures in deep sea vents. These would all be synonymous with Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So it feels like we're kind of entering this reset cycle. And that's just a byproduct, I think, of people waking up. That there would be a time where if we go back and look at whatever happened post 1840s, that there seems to be a split in the population. There seems to be a crack in the world. And you have the great migrations of 1850, which are a byproduct of this crack in the world. And as a result of which, there's a huge amount of earthquakes and fires and destruction, not just naturally, but from war as well. We're going to cover war tonight. So that's a big topic. That's a big, big component of what we're going to talk about. Okay. So I call this the slam dance of Uranus. This is my first stop along the way. So in 2026, I'm just going to read this to you and we're going to get into some of this. In 2026, Uranus concludes its long stay in Taurus. Early in the year, focusing on reevaluating finances and values, and then makes a significant shift into Gemini in April. So April 25th, Uranus goes into Gemini. So these are the key Uranus transits of 2026. So early 2026, Uranus stations direct on February 4th, ending its retrograde in Taurus. So February 4th, it stops. This period prompts a deep look at your relationship with security, true wealth, and sustainable living, wrapping up Uranus's transformative influence on finances and earthly values. We will see Uranus again in Taurus for a bit of a cleanup party, but this is a major, major transit as it goes into Gemini for a fairly significant period of time before it retreats and comes back again. No, I take that back. It doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. I had convinced myself that it did. It doesn't do that. So this is it. The tension. So this would also be a period where aforementioned earthquakes and volcanoes are highly active. Tension between the elements of earth and air is representative of conflict in the material world and heaven. Robert, you spell heaven with an E, not an A. To me, this is what this looks like, right? We are dealing with an abrupt change that forces us to reevaluate our values. I think we all know that a digital currency is coming. It feels like a fait accompli at this point. It's just a matter of when. And Taurus represents physical material resources. And Uranus gives us a different kind of twist and spin on it. So, of course, cryptocurrency really took off during Uranus and Taurus. It's like, oh, you think that's money? You think that green stuff and that silver and gold you have is money? Well, we got something different for you. We got a whole different way to evaluate money and transactions. It's called cryptocurrency. It wasn't just Bitcoin. Bitcoin had been around for a while. That's cryptocurrency. And it took off like a fucking skyrocket. And of course, we have all the controversies with the various exchanges. Sam Bankman-Fried, right? So we're going to be in a different place monetarily. So this period, let me read this again. Uranus stations direct on February 4th. Ending its retrograde in Taurus, this period prompts a deep look at your relationship with security. True wealth. What's your true wealth? Your true wealth, I know it sounds like fucking cliche. It is your health. It is your health. Taurus represents the body as well. Take it from somebody whose health has been compromised since the eclipse cycle, since August. You realize just how important your health is. It's like, how much money do we spend every year on staying healthy? Whether it's traditional medicine, which costs a shit ton of money, or alternative medicine, which if you want really good alternative medicine, yeah, you can find some pretty affordable hacks. But if you want the good stuff, the really good stuff, it's not cheap. So when you look at it in those terms, there is certainly a price to pay for one's health, whether it's maintaining it or making sure that you get it back. Right. So this is whatever your values are, whatever your values are, this period is very important. Because once this thing transits, once Uranus transits into Gemini, we're off. It's like a fucking rocket. And this is part of the theme for the year of the fire horse. Uranus entering into speedy Gemini. So April 25th, 2026, Uranus enters Gemini. And it's there from 2032 to 2033. This marks a major shift towards radical innovation in communication, media, tech, learning, bringing sudden changes and breakthroughs in how we share and receive information. I think we can all agree upon that. Now, with Gemini, you'll get something that's good and something that's not so good. You'll get something that's not so good, then you'll get something that's good. I mean, it's kind of the way it works. It doesn't always balance out immediately, but this is what happens with Gemini. And we're going to get into more of this as we go through these slides. Uranus's long-term stay in Gemini marks a significant change in 3D. It's true. Not only with agitated Earth activity in the ingress of Gemini, because we want to look at those last degrees of Uranus because they're unstable, but the money system as well as we move from physical to digital currencies. So, of course, what I like to do is I like to look backwards and see like what was going on the last time we just had a Uranus and near the end of Uranus and Taurus, which is kind of what we're going through right now with the price of gold and the price of silver. Gold was discovered in Pikes Peak, Colorado, leading to a metals rush at the end of Uranus and Taurus. So what are we seeing here, right? So what happened is that in California, they had a gold rush. Supposedly began in 1849, went on for about 4 or 5 years. And by the time they were done with that, they had discovered gold in Colorado. So you had a lot of these miners who got to the party late in California show up in Colorado. And so we have this gold rush. It's like a metals rush. It's kind of like what we're experiencing now. We're not out mining gold, but if you have gold and you have silver, you know what's been going on. Even if you don't, you know what's been happening. It's been going through the fucking roof, right? So that's one of the things that was part of the run up to Uranus and Gemini. Now, they didn't go to digital currency, but they went in a completely different direction with the country. And and it starts with Lincoln. And it's Lincoln's House Divided speech. Upon receiving the Republican nomination for president, Lincoln gives his House Divided acceptance speech. It occurs at 0 Uranus and Gemini. Now, it was also conjuncting Jupiter at 1 Gemini, and they split. You can't make this up. Uranus at 0 Gemini, Lincoln saying, hey, we got a house divided here, which cannot stand. Well, there's a different variation of that going on right now, and we're gonna get into it as we scroll through this thing. So, of course, we know where this leads. This takes us into the Civil War, Neptune and Aries, 0 degrees. We've heard Neptune and Aries before. So the U.S. is currently a house divided. So I got a little AI image here with Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro. That's what they're supposed to be then. Fractured mirror. So what do I have here? You're under Uranus and Gemini, 2026. The current condition of splits within splits, microaggressions and macro transgressions mount as the battle for free speech hurdles into uncharted territory. Again, I started working on this a week ago, and the receipts are in on this already, which we're going to get into towards the end of this. But what I'm talking about so you have splits within splits. So you have the Republican Party, and then you have MAGA in the Republican Party, which, by the way, is becoming more like the Republican Party every day, but that's a different story or a different iteration on the story. But you have the Republican Party, you have MAGA, and then within MAGA, you have more of the original kind of Tea Party, fiscal conservative, constitutionalist, and sort of matriculating into Nick Fuentes' America First paradigm. So you have these splits within the splits, right? You start off with, oh, we're Republicans, and by nature, we're more conservative. Well, you're really not. And the fat and corpulent corpse of the Republican Party, or close to it, was essentially reanimated by Donald Trump and the whole MAGA movement. I mean, seriously. I mean, the Republican Party was almost in zombie mode. I mean, they're running fucking Mitt Romney for president, right? It's like, and before that, they're running John McCain for president. I mean, there's no. It's all kind of a game anyway, right? Like Mitt Romney knows he's probably not going to win, but nonetheless, like this is the best that the party can come up with to take on a quote unquote outsider in Barack Obama. The Republican Party was dead. It was dead. And what happens is that MAGA comes in. It's like a spirit that reanimates that body. But the corpus of the Republican Party didn't always like what the reanimated spirit was doing to it, right? So it wasn't always a hug of these different platforms and ideologies. But ultimately, round number 2 with Trump, see that they can't get rid of him and that he's sort of the best chance that they have to offer in terms of a candidate to take on the Democrats who cheat like crazy, that they're going to finally get behind him and we will no longer be a house divided. We'll be a house united, more or less, right? Well, maybe at the top, where all of a sudden the Republican intelligentsia are much more in alignment with Trump now that Trump is really kind of George H.W. Bush kind of meets Reagan. They can wrap their arms around that. They can wrap their arms around this version of Trump. I can tell you that. You know, what Trump did in Venezuela was exactly what George H.W. Bush did to Manuel Noriega in Panama. It was the same deal. Although they tested out a bunch of crazy weapons down in Panama when they removed Noriega. But that's another story for a different show. But the base, it may be more unified at the top, but the base is not unified. There's definitely a fracture in the base. So it's kind of weird, right? It's sort of like, this is total Trump anyway. When Trump ran in 2016, the head was disconnected from the base. It was. It was a total algal kind of sort of relationship between the head and the body. And Trump, by the way, does have algal on his midheaven. So you had the head, which was not really into Trump, meaning the heads of the party, you know, the party, we'll call the party the head. When I say party, I'm talking about elected officials and longtime Republicans, some fundraisers, et cetera, et cetera. But you had this influx of new energy, new people, new voters. They saw Trump as an outsider. They're like, hallelujah, we can get behind this guy because he kind of talks like us. He's speaking to us. He's addressing our concerns. We're going to get behind him. So the body was energized and I would say mostly unified. Like that's how he gets elected. Well, the head gives him his cabinet from 2016 to 2020, who are all old school Republicans. They're all rhinos. And now it's inverted. Right now the head loves Trump. He's more like what they wanted him to be 2016 to 2020. Meanwhile, the body isn't digesting this really well. The body is not in alignment with the head because you have this fracture and this split going on in Trump as it relates to foreign policy and making America first versus making Israel first. That's really this thing that's shattered or created a Mason-Dixon line between the party or the entities inside the party. That's really what it's boiled down to. Now, you could also make a case with Tucker Carlson in there that Trump said that he would be a president of peace. And he said that. I'm not going to start any wars. How many wars got started on Joe Biden's watch? And I can end these wars. I can end them within 30 days. I'll end them in 30 days when I'm president. Not if. He would never talk like that. When? Trump is a big proponent of manifesting. I can tell you that. But that's not really how this thing has gone down. And we went in and we got involved in a war, theoretically, in Iran. Right now, we're pushing a regime change in Iran. Apparently, there's a lot of chaos in Iran. And who knows? We might see the end of the Khomeini government and the return of the Shah's kid, right? Wouldn't that be a fucking mind trip? I believe it's the Shah of Iran's son. So we'd have basically the return of the Shah, but not quite. Fucking weird. But that's going on. We still have the war in Ukraine. Trump has not stopped that. Participating in the war in Iran. That's a war. I don't care what you say, how you slice or dice it. It's a war. When you go in and you remove the head of state from a foreign country, I don't care what you call it, it's an act of war. It's an act of war. That is a form of aggression. You could call it anything you want. You could say, well, we got the Monroe Doctrine. It's still an act of war. So Trump is, and he'll go after anybody. What is he going into Nigeria again? I mean, so much for being the Prince of Peace. He certainly isn't that. So again, when you get into Uranus and Gemini, right, we are a house divided. And let's just go back one more time. That speech was given when Uranus was at 0 Gemini, conjunct Jupiter at 1 Gemini. Now, we don't have Jupiter in Gemini, but we got Uranus coming back in Gemini. And I think we can all agree that we're a house divided. All right, so we're in January. Let's talk about January. The year kicks off with a stellium in Capricorn, including a Venus-Mars conjunction in Cap on 1/5. That's tomorrow. It's a time of lowered expectations and grit versus a celebratory ringing in of the new year. Relationships take on a pragmatic tone, and mid-degree cardinal signs outside of the goat are challenged to find their footing without giving up too much ground on their foundational issues and challenges. What does that mean? It means that if you're a Cancer, or you're an Aries, or you're a Libra, and you're in the middle degrees of those signs, this Venus-Mars conjunction is going to impact you. Because Mars, you're looking after your own interests. Venus, you're having to take the interests of the other into account. When you have a blending of the two, sometimes it can be hella confusing. Like, whose needs need to be met? It could be a perfect blend and synthesis of the two, if you can find it. However, it's going to probably be more beneficial to Capricorns in the mid degrees versus the other signs. Because in the other signs, Uranus and Libra, you're going to get squared. You're going to get squared off against this Venus-Mars conjunction. So if you've got Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, even Mars, but usually it's going to be in those Sun, Mercury, Venus. We can throw the Moon in. If you've got those planets, right, in the middle degrees of Libra, Aries, you're going to get squared off against this Venus, Mars. And that's where there's conflict and tension and trying to sort out like what's yours and what's another person's. And what happens in Capricorn is that you can either get maximal cooperation, like it's very corporate in that way. It's like we have to do this because we have to serve a greater whole. So in a corporate world, right, you would say, okay, I'll play this role because the team needs it. Whatever you're supposed to do, the team needs it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to sacrifice, and I'll put my shoulder to the wheel, and I'll put in the effort, and I'll experience some growth around something that I don't really necessarily want to do. And there's opportunities for growth with stuff like that. That's possible. But you only get to that place until you've worked through the other options. And again, we're talking middle degrees of Aries and Libra. And what are the other options? Well, the other options are, well, it's all negotiation. What do you want? 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 And you can come to an impasse. What do they call it? A Mexican standoff? Oh, I think that's what they call it. You could come to but something has to give. Somebody has to give. Right? So it's a very dynamic process of somehow working out a win-win. Because when you get into the Venus-Mars conjunction and this whole idea of Kazemi, where the two sort of cancel each other out, it can be problematic because that you're sort of in the cauldron of needs. So it's not a great time, particularly to negotiate in a relationship, because even if you feel like you've won, you may feel like you've lost. That's a kind of a difficult piece to sort of process. Like, what price victory? Just keep that in mind. What price victory? Now, for you middle degree Cancer signage people, this is happening in opposition, right? So it's in opposition to your plan. So that's when outside forces determine your path more in what you are being asked to do and what you actually agree to do. And for me, this is all workplace. So you middle degree Cancer people are dealing more with workplace issues. You're dealing more with the burden of responsibility versus shared burdens, things like that, and putting it on your heavy shoulders. For you Capricorn people in those middle degrees, you're in a bit of a better place. And the reason for that, and this is all starting to happen right now. Tomorrow, it really peaks hard. The reason why it's a bit better for you is because you're going to feel beyond those other three signs a bit more in control. And in fact, you may be the one triggering some of these other negotiation relationship dynamics that are part of this Venus-Mars conjunction. At a larger level, it's like to me, this Venus-Mars conjunction in in Capricorn is Orwellian. It's kind of like war is peace. It's like, oh, well, now that we don't have Maduro to worry about, we can just get on with our lives and feel much more peaceful, right? So it's this cultivation, this idea that through strength, we'll be able to be more vulnerable. Through war, we'll be able to experience more peace. Through the vanquishing of people that we don't like on a political level, we'll have relationships with new people that we do like. But this is the theme. You know, it's really interesting. Yesterday, I was watching pro football is the ultimate. Sports are some of the ultimate vehicles of mind control. Up until yesterday, the NFL was all about change, whatever the fuck they meant by that, change, equality, all these vacuous sort of liberal DEI talking points. They had their coaches all wearing the same sweatshirts with the same programming on it, right? It's like, oh man, I gotta put up with this shit while I watch a football game. and your mind like acknowledges it. You have to acknowledge it. They've got it in the end zones. I mean, talk about propaganda. Well, that changed. So yesterday, because it is the new year, they're kicking off the 250th anniversary of the country. And I thought, oh man, this is a very interesting time to go in and get Maduro, because you get the requisite propaganda that goes along with it. It's brilliant. I'll give you an example. Before the 49ers and Seahawks kicked off, and I think this was true for every game, but I can't say that for sure because I only really watched one. There were 2 games yesterday. I don't know what it was like today. I didn't really watch any games today. But before the San Francisco 49er game, they had a guy come out and he's saying, America the Beautiful. Like, that doesn't really happen in this sequence. And then they came out and sang the Star Spangled Banner. You got 2 bangers for the price of one. I'm like, this is really interesting that they're doing this on the heels of this Venezuela thing. It's like we now get to celebrate a victory. And I feel like this Venus-Mars, just keep your eye on this now. Keep your eye on the messaging with this Venus-Mars conjunction, right? It's all going to be really Orwellian, and it's going to be peace through war, vulnerability through strength, right? Those paradoxical terms. Like this is how it's going to be messaged. We can all breathe a little easier tonight now that Nicolas Maduro is no longer in power. We won't be having as many drugs on this. I mean, I guarantee you. And that's the Venus part. The Mars part, of course, is going in and, extracting and plucking them out. That's coming. And if you think about like sort of the chronometer of the year, and we're playing with this calendar, this Venus-Mars conjunction right at the beginning of the year is really important because it's sending a message for the rest of the year and what we're going to have to deal with. And it's in Capricorn, and Capricorn doesn't fucking care. It's a means to an end, whatever that is. So if you think that this is a one and done with Maduro, you should rethink that. And they're just getting started. All right. Stellium in Aquarius on the 21st, Sun, New Moon, Mercury, Venus, Pluto. I thought this was interesting. Pragmatism turns into what the hell. A high strange comes into play. As high strange comes into play, people feel cooped up and want more freedom across the board, whether it's speech or relationships. The status quo is challenged. The natives are restless. While the strange bedfellows theme of 2025 still in play is heightened during this period. So that's what we saw in 2025. We're, strange bedfellows, people coming together. Like we just the other day, Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC on the same page. They hated each other. At least that's what we're led to believe. They hated each other. But now they're coming out and saying the same thing about Venezuela and Maduro. You had, Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey from both sides of the aisle come out and say, we're going to vote on this Epstein thing because we need these files released. And they did, right? But you can also see part of this as being related to the split and the fracture that I talked about earlier when I was up here just recently. Alex Jones came out and said, Candace Owens works for the World Economic Forum. She's a globalist. She's a globalist. So these were people you would have thought have been on the same page, but clearly they're not. And Jones is an Aquarian, and Candace Owens is a Taurus, so they're not going to match really well, anyway, right? They're just not. It's not the best. So you have to ask yourself this question: how much of this, whether it's the Somalia shit, which we got into on Friday, and by the way, my theory on Somalia, Somaliland, the money, Israel, it's all been fleshed out. It's all been fleshed out. I don't want to get into it too much here. Go back, watch the show on Friday. I'll give you just a headline that the money that was, first of all, let's just be honest. The average Somalian is not going to be able to run this kind of scam. Just being honest about it. They had to have people run the scam for them. And it's billions of dollars. And where do you think the money went? Do you think it just went into somebody's new home in Duluth? The new Somalia family in Alphabet City, and I don't know where they live, but I know they live in Minnesota. There's Somalians all over the place. Somalians in Texas as well. Do you think it's 3 new cars and a house? Probably not. Maybe some of that. But they had to, this is billions of dollars. It's been going on for a while. You don't think people have known about this? Of course they've known about this. There should not be an apostrophe there. Which country came out and recognized Somaliland immediately? Israel. Somaliland is kind of like this controversial, massive patch of land that has access to the Gulf of Aden. And it can be very strategic. And apparently Israel is building bases there. And apparently they also would like to move the Palestinians there. So a lot of money has had to change hands in that area to make this happen. So we have the Somalia thing, which is how we got here. Now we have the Maduro thing, and the ghost of Epstein is still lingering. And this stellium lands right on Jeffrey Epstein's sun in Aqua at 0 degrees. He's got a 0 degree sun in Aqua. So the degree of that stellium, they're all around. So we've got Sun, New Moon, Mercury, Venus, Pluto, all clustered around Jeffrey Epstein's sun in Aquarius. So we've had Epstein mania, peak insanity. They've got rumors of Epstein in Greece. Apparently, Charlie Kirk somehow knew he was living in Israel. Some people saw him in Greece. So now Epstein has taken on this kind of Elvis mania. So be careful, because you'll see like pictures of Epstein in other parts of the world that won't be him. Now, I think something's going to happen here. And it's the pressure. It's the pressure brought on by Pluto. Especially if Jeffrey Epstein's still alive. It makes it even more salient. The pressure of Epstein and the unresolved nature of the files docs causes people to close to Epstein to crack, forcing some of them to terminate their own existence in some cases, begin to spill the beans, even if the language is in Freudian slip territory. So keep your eye on people that have some connection to Jeffrey Epstein that get unalived. That's number one. Number two, watch the language. Watch the language. 121, that's 17 days from now. We'll go back, we'll go over it. It's close to real time. We'll see how over the mark I am, in spite of all the efforts to distract us from what's not happening with Jeffrey Epstein. And there'll be more, I guarantee you, it won't go away. Pluto and this stellium must have its day under the astrological sun. All right, here we go. Now we're going to talk about the arrival of the Titans. Saturn, Neptune, Aries, which I'm going to go back to because I go through this and then I go on a little bit of a break. Not a break, but I talk about Mercury retrogrades in 2026, etc. Okay, this historic conjunction will set the tone for the next 15 years, the length of a Neptune cycle. Neptune, a planet predisposed as a water body, the container for Pisces gets a makeover. Lax attitudes around drugs get revisited as the Trump admin declares war on drugs. And in the case of Venezuela, drug-dealing countries. Now, obviously, that had already happened. They were already, this is where I did this. Yeah, here we go. Under the cover of protection and security, draconian measures are taken, and the U.S. lurches towards war at sea. The chart below belongs to Venezuela. Note the Saturn-Neptune square with Venezuela's natal moon in Capricorn. Yes, that's what I was looking at. Yes. Thank you. I even drew a little line there. I thought, oh yeah, right. That's the outlier of the aspect. But Mars on the moon was much more immediate now, wasn't it? So this has already been played out. But it's, theoretical war on drugs. But there's already a war on CBD, which has THC in it. They just want to have synthetic THC. There's also Trump reclassified marijuana and took it out of the Schedule 1 federal classification. But by reclassifying it, there is a, and I have to go back through this, but there's a clause that allows them to go after certain states that have decriminalized marijuana. So it's a legal sort of twist that they've done here in order to ultimately go in and shut down states that have a non-criminal relationship with marijuana. It's a big push inside the Trump administration. Number one, the drug companies want synthetic THC. Two, there is a high degree of Christian influence in the Trump administration, which is very anti-drug. So they have a moral crusade. So it's big pharma and big religion, mostly big church. We'll call it big church. Not big temple, big mosque, but big church. So this has already happened. We can move on from this slide. All right, so this is the cardinal signs here. Just like we looked at Venus, Mars, and the cardinal signs, we're looking at the cardinal signs as it relates to Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. Who does it impact most? Cardinal signs are people with heavy cardinal in their charts. The first 8 to 10 degrees feel the most heat. If you've got planets between 0 and let's say 8, because Neptune moves really slowly, we could go with 0 to 5. If you have planets 0 to 5 in Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, and Aries, immediately this is for you. For those of you who have planets at around 8 or 10 degrees, it's still for you because Saturn's going to come in and do a number as well. All right. Cancer planets get boiled like crabs, and people holding them want out of the fiery pot. Holding them meaning the planets. So if you've got planets that are between 0 and 5 in Cancer, this immediate square is scalding. Now, the boiling part, maybe it doesn't get so bad because you're already in the pot. But if you're just dropped into the pot, then you want to get out of the fire. You want to get out of the pot. It takes Cancerian people clearly out of their comfort zone, or Cancerian people, Cancerian planets out of their comfort zone. And it's different for Mercury, Venus, Sun, Moon. It's going to be different, but the effect is going to be similar, right? It's going to be similar. It's just going to affect different parts of your life. And in some areas, some cases, it may affect more than one if you've got multiple planets in Cancer around those signs. Cap planets are scorched earth. Who's doing the burning or getting burned? Yeah, it's like Capricorn loves protocol, loves authority, loves tradition, loves chain of command, right? Capricorn loves all that shit. It functions really well when it's all those things are mapped out and laid out, and they know where they are. There can be people above them, but as long as they know what that is, right, or where they are sort of hierarchically, or, where things are going, what their 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan is all about, right? They love that shit. But the Saturn Neptune conjunction squaring 0 to 5 and like 0 to 10 on the Capricorn chart does not do well with insubordination, because Capricorn is a sign that likes to be in control. And this is one of those transits where, hey, buddy, pal, you're not in control. You've got fires to put out. And these fires have been set by people who want to see you burn. So if you're a Capricorn and you're in a position of authority, you need to keep this in mind. Whether you're a director or a supervisor or the head of a household, right? The first 10 degrees are going to be the hottest for kind of 0 to 10 cap. Now, once Saturn moves on, you have Neptune, and Neptune serves, as Neptune moves through these degrees, it serves as a bit of a weakening effect, right? With Cancer and Capricorn. It's different, but a bit of a weakening effect, or a debilitating effect. Libra planets feel pressure to maintain their center and find a middle ground. This is the nature of Libra, right? So all this is on the other side of Libra. And there's pressure, right? Pressure. And Libra is always going to be the diplomat, the mediator, but the opposition is coming in hot, right? So Libra has to be even better when it comes to dealing, because Libra doesn't like to deal. Libra is very different than Aries. Aries is like, bring it on, right? I'll take the heat. I'll take the challenge. Bring it on. Libra isn't like that. Libra is more like, hey, can we just find a cool way to do this, a cool way to get along. Hey, I didn't mean any trouble when I was talking with your girlfriend. How did I know it was your girlfriend? I was just having a conversation with a person. Right. That would be a total Libra thing to do because Libras are almost always flirting. Well, that's not going to work, right? Because there's this intensity that's coming at Libra in those early degrees that's going to be hot. The other thing with Libra is that sometimes Libra can play it kind of fast and loose. You know what I mean? And Aries kind of holds Libra to their word. It's like, you said this, you said you were going to do this. You have to honor your commitment. You have to honor your contract. You have to honor your agreement. Oh, yeah. Right. It's not comfortable. Not comfortable. Aries. Aries does the best under this conjunction as a feeling of destiny is at hand, where physical and spiritual goals come into greater focus and clarity. If you're in Aries and you've got planets between 0 and 10, it's a good transit for you. It's a very good transit. I like Saturn transits by and large. I don't mind them conjuncting Venus. I don't mind the Saturn conjunctions. If you are willing to work and put in the effort, Saturn conjunctions can be great. Saturn conjunctions with Venus limits your relationships, but you may have one relationship that is absolutely essential to the rest of your life. So of all the 4 cardinal signs, Aries makes out the best in the early degrees of this conjunction. Okay, so this is a really interesting time for Gen A. As I previously talked about, Gen A, born 2009 to 2025, Pluto and Capricorn, get activated by the conjunction, particularly those born in 2009-10 at the beginning of the transit. But as Saturn, the ruling planet of Capricorn, ingresses deeper into Aries, the more activation takes place. While Gen Z has created a range war in free speech and authenticity, Gen A is the equivalent of a breakaway society. They're not interested in reform, but are more invested in going their own way. We'll begin to see these traits emerge. This is going to be a very interesting generation. I've talked about them at length in the past. They're not going to want to have anything to do with the range war, not because they're conflict avoidant. It's because they think they can create something better. They're going to be very interesting to watch. And they're going to have a lot of lessons to teach the rest of us. They're going to say, we don't have to play that game. And I could see this generation being more communal, because Cancer, they're ruled by Capricorn, and Cancer, being the opposite sign, has much more fundamental, family-oriented, traditional values at its core. And so whenever we get into the opposition, whenever we get into Pluto, we're always dealing with the opposite sign as well, right? So if you have Pluto, it's like for instance, the baby boomers, Pluto and Leo, they really got into the opposite sign. They really got into Aquarius, right? It's like people were singing The Age of Aquarius by the Fifth Dimension, and they were boomers and they were singing it, right? This was the boom time. Woodstock was an Aquarian event. They looked back at, even then, it's like, oh, this is the birth of the Aquarian age. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this better than our parents. So the boomers were always attracted to all things Aquarian. Once they got out of the 60s and 70s, they were the ones that were promoting the new age. First they got into human potential, then they got into the new age, which is very Aquarian. So that's just one example, right? Like if you look at the millennials, when the millennials tap into Taurus and they get into things like regenerative farming and grazing and maker culture, they're really good, right? That's the opposite of their Pluto and Scorpio is Taurus. So the opposite signs always come into play, right? Always. You look at Gen Z, Pluto and Sagittarius, and what are they invested in? Free speech. You get Nick Fuentes, and you get the Groypers, and you get a generation where Gemini and the trickster plays a big role in their kind of Plutonian quest to define their generational identity. So when we look at Pluto and Capricorn, it's Cancer. And it's very traditional. Very, very traditional. Speaking of traditional, I just saw that what was her name? Blue. Is it Lucy Blue? The woman who like banged 1,000 guys in one time. She just got baptized in Australia, I think. Interesting. I believe she's Gen Z. You'll see this with Gen Z. With Pluto and Sagittarius, they will have a turnabout with their religion and their faith. That's just the nature of Sagittarius. They can be licentious, bawdy, sensationalist, but really into like excess, right? And then they can have a moment and they can renounce it all. That is a typical trait for Sagittarius. And with Pluto, generationally, that I think is in the cards for a lot of Gen Z, if it hasn't happened already, and it's on its way. So Gen A, we get to see activated. And it starts with this Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And as Saturn moves through the degrees, it's going to start to square off against the entirety of that generation's Pluto. And they're going to want to go their own way. They're already rejecting digital culture. A lot of them are into books more than they are their cell phones. It's fascinating. All right, so we got some Mercury retrogrades coming up. Here's 3 Mercury retrogrades for 2026, the 3 of them. And Mercury retrograde is in the water signs and challenges us to find a way to navigate between thought and emotion. Remember, water is emotion. So February 26th to March 20th, Pisces, witch hunt begins. Leakers, whistleblowers, and habitual liars have a rough time under this retrograde. Under promise and over deliver is the key here. And don't agree to something you'll regret later. Flights of fancy and anything to escape is on the radar. June 29th, July 23rd, Cancer. People are rethinking their allegiances and alliances. Where is my loyalty? Is a big question under this MR. Decision making around homes and the housing market in general are challenging, to say the least. This retrograde impacts Trump bigly because it goes over just like how Mars went over his planets in Cancer. Now we got Mercury going over his planets in Cancer. I think this is going to be another difficult year for the housing market. I don't think you have to be an astrologer to figure that out. October 25th, November 13th, Scorpio. This MR is in some ways an outcome on how the previous MR cycles were handled and dealt with. If you have been true to the inner flame of truth, you will be fine. And it's a time of esoteric and occult revelation. If you haven't, there's some psychic burn with this MR. Secrets are revealed, and the planet's money system is under deep scrutiny as people wrestle with debt and casting it off. So it's the culmination of the previous two Mercury retrogrades. And in Scorpio, it is ultimately transformational. Okay, we got a Venus retrograde this year as well. Venus will go retrograde in 2026 from October 3rd to November 13th, 14th, moving through intense Scorpio and diplomatic Libra, jumping on board the Mercury retrograde. We have a rare Mercury-Venus simultaneous retrograde cycle. The most convenient way out of a dilemma might not be the best. On a mundane level, treaties and agreements are broken, and suits are filed and or resolved. Relationships, both professional and in the public light, are hanging by a thread. Moving on or hanging in there is a big theme across the board. Where do you place value? Question mark. The good news? Question mark. People dealing with estates that have been embroiled in litigation, especially with family members, will find this period helpful as something looms on the social horizon that pushes long-standing estate and family issues to the foreground. The government looks to step in and become a liquidator, looking after its own assets, forcing people to settle and get something before it's gone. Keep that in mind, right? I can't tell you how many fucking people, and I love these people, they're not unworthy of empathy. I can't tell you how, I use the word fucking here because it is appropriate in the number of people I work with and do sessions for that have long-standing issues with their family and estates and settlement. Well, I'm going to tell you, with this Venus retrograde, we're looking at a bigger hand that wants more. So inheritance tax, capital gains, all this stuff is going to be on the table, right? Whatever is like kind of floating out there in the ethers, and some person has some money and they think they can outlast this other person or other members of the family, you're going to have a rude awakening. Because I think something big is coming in that area. And it's going to force people who have been basically putting pins in a voodoo doll with each other to finally come to the fucking table and say, look, if we don't settle this, we're going to be screwed and we're going to get even less than we thought we would. So in general, especially during this time, like we're going through Libra, Scorpio, relationships and contracts are really coming to the fore. And I would say relationships in general get really tested during this time. And if you make it through this Venus retrograde with your relationship, you're good. You're good. If you don't make it through, you're still going to be good, but you won't be good with the same relationship because this is kind of a funeral pyre for everything Venus as it moves into Scorpio. So it goes retrograde. Anyway, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay. I'm going to talk about a very big subject, and it's war. War. And when I say Scorpio, I'm not necessarily talking about Venus. I'm talking about the sun, right? Because it goes, so Venus is retrograding, and it's going through, right? We're going through a transit between Libra and Scorpio during that time. That's what I'm referring to. Okay. All right, this is the final topic here, and it's a big topic, and it's war. And this is something that I have covered before on this show. And the Saturn Aries cycles with war. Now, Neptune can be very deceptive, right? Kind of like, oh, that's not really a war. That's a minor skirmish. Oh, that's a land conflict. Oh, that's a regime change. Like Neptune obfuscates war, at least early on. And then as Saturn moves away from Neptune, it's naked. So I've done this before, and I'm bringing it up again, that there are previous Saturn cycles where war is a big deal. First being the Civil War. Actually, this is Neptune and Aries. But eventually Saturn shows up and joins the party with the Civil War. So we have the Civil War. We have here in 1968, we have the war, another Civil War in the United States. That is in Chicago, 1968, Saturn and Aries. The Germans are just getting cooking with Saturn and Aries. And we're going to get into that. And then you have the Kosovo War that happens. So this is going to be, I believe, 1937. This is a little past 1840. Hold on. Yeah, so it's going to be past like it's going to be past Lincoln's speech, right? Let me get back here. 1937, 1968, 1997. Kosovo. All right, so this is really weird. 1938, this is weird. Germany in 1938, Saturn and Aries, kind of at the end of the cycle, by the way. Actually, I take that back. So it was Uranus and Aries, and Saturn is just beginning. So Saturn and Aries, what we're dealing with is Germany trying to get part of its territory back. Let's see, what year is that? 38. 1938. Give me 1 second here. Sudeten, right, which is the borderland of Czechoslovakia. Sudeten. They want that. So in 1938, the Czech government capitulates to Germany to give them that territory, Sudeten. It's kind of the start of the beginning of World War II. It's a ramp up. Both Poland and Hungary demand slices of Czech territory where their nationals reside. So you have Poland and Hungary right there, those two flags, right? They want part of what was left of Czechoslovakia. And when Hitler met with the leaders of both countries, he said, "You don't get to eat the dinner unless you help in the kitchen." Meaning that if we're going to do this, you're going to have to be a part of it. We're going to need you and your troops. Now, what's weird is that when Saturn goes back into Aries in 1997, NATO invites those three same countries to join their alliance in 1999. It's really weird. It's like, hey, come on over here. Come join NATO. Hey, Saturn and Aries. Yeah. Meanwhile, they're having a war in Kosovo. So one of the things, we're almost done here, by the way. We got 3 more slides to go. So there's a war cycle. I don't want to skim over this too quick. We're in a war cycle. Saturn and Aries brings war. And when you look at kind of what I've been talking about with all the outer planets are resetting. I mean, Pluto, kind of sort of the old kid on the block, right? At what, 2 degrees Aquarius. All the outer planets are resetting. And even this year, Jupiter resets and goes into Leo. Neptune's resetting. Saturn's resetting. Uranus is resetting. When you have that amount of outer planets experiencing change and resetting their vibrational transmission. Reset is a key. It's a key word. And this is something that we're going through. We're going through a reset. Whether we like it or not, we're going through a reset. And whether it's the WEF version or whether it's going to be this new Golden Dome Alliance that's going to run the reset, like there's a reset happening here. And it's also very much like the previous resets where we went through a period of prehistory and those societies or those civilizations got laid to waste and rubble. We still have some remnants of it, but we're in that period. This next 3 years is part of that period. War is always synonymous with resets. And we've kicked the year off basically by having a little war. That's an act of war. What happened with Venezuela? Is Venezuela going to fight back? No, but as I said earlier, there's unintended consequences. Okay. I can't stress this enough with Saturn and Aries. And one of the things that is pushing us towards war is that people are waking up. They're waking up. And there's so many things that can distract people and get them off track. Like, for instance, the Somalia thing. I think the Somalia thing is worth talking about, but I think it would be remiss to think that they didn't know about this for a long time, and they have. But so why is it coming up now? Why is it breaking now? Well, they've got to feed the people something. They have to give people something to distract them. It's the same thing with Venezuela. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? Like the Venezuela thing has a number of potential outcomes and sort of perks and benefits sort of built into it from a propagandistic standpoint. Some people could see that and go, oh yeah, that's a win. We're really winning. And people want to identify with winners. I know a lot of people who, when their sports team sucks, they go and find another team. And this is my team now. right? Oh, I'm a big fan of this team. How long you been a fan of that team? Oh, I just started liking them. You can do it. There's nothing wrong with it. Nobody's saying you can't, right? But, it's this idea that people want to be on a winning side. Frankly, I don't blame them. If your team has sucked for 30 years, maybe it'd be nice to root for another team. Hey, I like these guys now. But sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes you put up with the shitty bullshit of your team and hopefully you turn the ship around. But that's one of the things that is clearly in the air with this Venezuela Maduro thing. And there are people who are going to pound their chest and chant USA, and Trump's going to look like he's the Cheshire Cat. Trump is he's going to fucking gloat. He won't just remind people, he's going to gloat, and he's going to hang this over every other country in South America like the sword of Damocles. And this is how we're starting the year, right? War is peace. All right. So one of the things that Saturn, we're just talking about Saturn and Aries, it's the limitation of the individual. And in 1938 is when the Nuremberg laws came into play. If you don't know what the Nuremberg law was, if you were Jewish in Germany and you had your papers, there's your J. That basically says you're a Jew. Oh, and that little star up there too. Right? So it's like, oh, we're identifying people. We're identifying people that are problematic to our system. So now you got this guy, Shlomo Kramer. I guess it came out last week, but I'm just hearing about him this week. So at the end of 2026, this guy is the CEO of an online cybersecurity company called Checkpoint. And he wants to end the First Amendment. He's like making the rounds on MSNBC and CNN and basically saying, hey, look, for the safety and the security and to make sure that we're all on the same page, we need to make sure that everybody on the internet is identified. And this whole idea of free speech is a nice notion, but we're gonna have to. He's not even from this fucking country. He's Israeli, and they're starting to feel the heat. So they're using this to their advantage, and they want to basically make everybody prove their identity on the internet. Like you will not be able to have an anonymous name. Now, that doesn't keep all of these alphabets or whomever wants to follow you from, it doesn't keep your identity from them. They know who you are. They know where you go. They have a pretty sizable file. They have a pretty sizable file on all of us. Some of us probably have more sizable files than others, but nonetheless, right? So to think that this doesn't happen already is poor thinking. On the other hand, going from behind the scenes, trackable, traceable, identifiable, from behind the scenes to making you and everything you say and do as part of your identity on the internet, that's a pretty big leap. And not only that, but he's actually talking about more of that, and that's policing websites. So if you're somebody who has a strong opinion, let's say, for instance, we all got to go real ID, and you have a strong opinion about certain things, and the people that you have a strong opinion about don't like it, they'll have deals in place with social media platforms and networks to remove you. That's what this guy wants. So again, Saturn and Aries, it's the limitation of the individual. The limitation, you go back, look at that late 90s period, they had American patriots in their crosshairs. Timothy McVeigh was theoretically unalived during Saturn and Aries. Saturn and Aries, you had the bombing in Atlanta at the Olympics in 1996. You had a bunch of they had a bunch of stuff going on with Saturn and Aries that were all about, oh, we've got to be we have to be really careful of American terrorists. People forget like what a big theme that was in the Clinton administration. Why? Because we were on to the Clintons. AM radio during the 90s, if you had a conservative AM radio station, there was at least one person on that station that was slightly conspiratorial. In some cases, very conspiratorial. So AM radio, and you had, of course, Rush Limbaugh, who made it a daily practice to go after the Clintons. So the Clintons had a beef with so-called patriots, and I think they passed like this domestic terror bill right around the same time as the Oklahoma City. This is what I'm talking about, the limitation of the individual. Now, Neptune Saturn conjunctions, that's tricky, right? Because Neptune represents prisons, and it represents institutions that people don't normally go to, right? So this and you don't want to go to these institutions. So I wonder like what's going to happen when Saturn and Neptune hit full stride in Aries. Like what kind of legislation or what kind of acts or what kind of executive orders, like they're already experiencing this in places like England, Europe, Canada, Australia. I'm sorry you're having to go through this. Clearly, we're not far behind. When this guy comes out and basically says, we got to end the First Amendment, he's not even fucking from this country. It represents the limitation of the individual. Now, that said, remember, this is fire, and fire forges. So at the beginning of this Neptune-Saturn conjunction, which I think can be very uncomfortable just in general, at the beginning of it, it can be very delusional. Everything's fine. Nothing's going to happen. Society's going to remain the same. But on the other hand, I think people will feel walls starting to close in. And it really is the beginning of a 3-year period of what I would call tribulation. Now, it may not be tribulation in the biblical sense, but we as individuals will be tested with Saturn and Aries. Aries is the individual. Aries is Vitruvian man, right? We are Aries. And Saturn is the reaper come to exact its toll in Aries. So the good news is that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And there can be an absolute stealing of the will with Saturn and Aries. I assume that during this period of time, we're going to see people who will show up and they'll be incredibly heroic. And in some cases, heroic in a way that might be sacrificial. In other cases, heroic in, hey, let's fall in with this person. Let's join this person, right? In whether it's ideas or actions, I could see this. We're in a conflict. We're in a clash of civilizations. And there's a civilization here that has been raised on certain ideals. Freedom of expression being a primary ideal. And there are forces that have interpenetrated our society that do not share the same value. The freedom of expression does not mean the same thing. And so as a result of this is a clash of civilizations. And it's happening right now. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Where it goes is a whole nother story. And we're going to find that out. And we're going to find out what's worth fighting for and what's worth living for. That is on our horizon. Okay. The decline of Donald Trump. It's been spoken of many times before, but if astrology is the thing, and it's a thing, he's got Saturn going into his 8th house. Remember that Mercury retrograde? It's going to come back here through his 11th house. And he's going to have Saturn and Neptune. So first of all, he's going to have a Neptune opposition. And Saturn-Neptune opposition, it feels to me like scandal. We got a little scandal in the air. Also, I don't think his health is great. No matter what he says, no matter what kind of test he passed, I don't think it's great. Do they have ways to ameliorate that? Yes. Or is there more than one Trump? Yes. In my opinion, there is. But Saturn in the 8th house is it's like a death. We've talked about this before. So I see this coming year with Saturn, in fact, this whole Saturn transit, as the beginning of the decline of Donald Trump. It's just happening right now. And we'll get more of a fix on this in March of this year, where Saturn comes into direct opposition with Neptune. He's got Neptune at 5 Libra. So he's got this Neptune opposition going on for quite a while. He's also going to have Saturn squaring Mercury. He's got a planet at one of those middle degree Cancer signs that I was talking about. And he's got Neptune squaring Mercury as well. He'll say anything. So he's going to have a T-square with his natal Mercury and his natal Neptune and transiting Neptune. I don't think you can believe anything he's going to say. I mean, I feel like there are times where he lets the truth out. Oh, yeah, but it's not direct. It's clearly not direct. He'll tell you the truth in asides. He'll bury the truth in something that he's talking about. It's in there, but you're going to have to find it. Okay. We got some trouble in the housing market. And this is the US chart. And I was looking at this. And I just put this together before the show. And it has to do with first of all, with Jupiter retrograde. And it's here in the 8th house of the US. So this is all about other people's money and housing. And I feel like Jupiter goes back to, I think, 14 degrees. I feel like we're on the brink of a lot of foreclosures with this Jupiter retrograde. And then Saturn, the aforementioned Saturn, is going to go along with Neptune into the US 4th house. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of displacement with Saturn in the 4th house. You're going to see a lot of people moving, leaving, taking on the van life, going to other countries, some migration to other states with the idea that they're just going to need a more affordable life. Things get harder under this cycle. And with Neptune going into fourth house, it's sort of like, the American dream used to be owning a house, 2-car garage. And with Neptune moving into the fourth house, it's like that dream is going down the drain. Yeah. I think flooding is going to be an issue here in the States as well, with Neptune going into that fourth house. Aries. Whenever I think of Neptune and Aries, I just think of like Mount St. Helens, even though Neptune wasn't there, but Mount St. Helens. I think of more geothermal shit going down with Neptune and Aries. That's not to say that flooding couldn't be a part of something, right? Especially after a fire, and especially after California, you get the mud floods in California. That's really what they are. Those mudslides are like mud floods. So I think the housing market's in trouble. I think we're going to have a lot of foreclosures. People, I could see people just thinking, I got to get out. I got to sell this house now. Like whatever equity, I don't want to be underwater in my mortgage. And then you're going to have an absolute glut of inventory. If you're thinking of selling your house, I would do it sooner rather than later. I would do it like before Saturn gets into that fourth house and starts to get cooking. It's already going to happen. But I feel like it's more than just the foreclosures and rising insurance costs. That's like so eighth house shit. It's going to literally force people to find another cheaper. What happens with the cheaper places is that they're cheaper for a while, but eventually it's going to catch up. Eventually it'll catch up, right? Oh, I'm going to go to this place. I can rent a 2-bedroom apartment or 2-bedroom house if they're available in this place for $900 a month. Eventually it'll go up to $1,200, $1,300. I guarantee you. And at some point there will be very little separating mediocre inventory from really poor inventory. Like you can pay $2,500, $3,000 a month for an apartment or a home, and it'll be worth it, right? It'll be much better than paying, say, $1,300 a month. But who could really afford that, right? So I think the housing market is already in a trouble, and we're going to see a precipitous slide with this housing market, and that's based mostly on this Jupiter retrograde right over here, but also Saturn going into that fourth house and really reshaping how Americans live. I'm just talking about America in general. But this Saturn Neptune conjunction and the test of the individual and the limitations that the individual is going to have to face on many different fronts, not least of which will be the freedom of expression, is going to affect a lot of people. So if you're in another part of the world and you're listening to this, we're all on the same boat. I would think that most of us are in the same boat. If you have an exceeding amount of wealth, you may be on a different boat. Well, who's the shitty one? Is it Carnival Cruises? Who is it? Norwegian the best? You're probably on Norwegian, and the rest of us are on the Carnival Booze Cruise. All right. So this is the general astro outlook for everything that I've just covered with Saturn, Neptune, some of the other planets. Early cardinal, challenge and opportunity. These are the two words for you. Early cardinal, if you're a cardinal sign, you're going to be Libra, Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, or in order Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. Early fixed, gripping the wheel. Why do I say gripping the wheel? Because Pluto is squaring your early fixed planets. Yes, gripping the wheel. And early mutable seems to kind of avoid some of this stuff, but not with Uranus in the early degrees of Gemini. So it's not out of the grease fire. So if you're a Virgo, Gemini, Pisces, Sagittarius, you've been kind of going through it with Saturn in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces. You've kind of gone through it. So you're going to see like some of your other friends, particularly your cardinal friends, kind of go through it. You say, oh, gee, well, that's not me. Well, you're not out of the grease fire because Uranus is so radical and unpredictable that you could be doing just fine, and all of a sudden you're having your own personal reset of sorts, right? So early cardinal, challenge and opportunity, early fix, gripping the wheel, early mutable, not out of the grease fire. All of you, all of us should count our blessings and do your absolute best in this year to stay healthy. We're running a marathon with Saturn and Aries. It is not a sprint. It is not a sprint. We're running a marathon here. So, make sure that you're in good shape, good health. Measure your energy, right? Measure your energy, measure your flow. You can get really burnt out with Saturn and Aries. So we're going to have to work smart and hard. The two of them are what's the word I'm looking for? The two of them are not mutually exclusive. It's two words, actually. So working smart and hard under Saturn and Aries, very important. But pace yourself. Build your strength and build endurance. Because by the end of this, we should be stronger, right? When Saturn goes into Taurus 3 years from now, it's like, okay, we're ready. We're ready for what the new world has to bring us. But we're all going through the fire and we're all going through it together. Okay, just a quick reminder, if you feel so inclined, help our good friend Lynette stay in her home and help her get her car running again. Every little bit helps. And, when you help somebody in our tribe, it'll come back to you. Or just in general, we don't have to be tribal and exclusive. When you help other people, it comes back to you. So if you can find it in your heart to throw Lynette a few bucks and keep her off the streets and get her car up and running, that'd be really helpful. Don't forget, as far as money goes, I have my special, and you can go to my website. That'll be up until next Friday. Go to the transit reading, $155, and there is a call to action. I have a call/text service, and you can do both there, and you can call me. In most cases, if I'm not busy, I will pick up the call, and we'll set something up. All right, we're back in the game. Shataria, thank you. Mods, thank you for being magnificent. That's a Michael Scott sounding word, magnificent. We'll be back on Tuesday. The Astro weather starts up again. So join us here at 8 a.m. on this channel Tuesday through Thursday. If you're new to the channel, join us here. And we look at the astrology of the day. And I give you whatever kind of insights I can glean. There's good company, good humor. It's a great way to start your day. And if you're not starting your day, it's a great way to check in and see what's going on astrologically and hang out with some cool people. So there you go. All right. That's it for tonight's show. A crisp 2.5 hours. And you know what they say. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. We'll be back on Tuesday. God bless. Love you all. And good night for now.